to all you lovely people out there watching this video, I say to each and every one of you, never give in. Innovate. Find new ways. This is BTC Gambler, and today we're going into even more detail on the game Baccarat. Some of you may ask, what is my fascination with the game Baccarat? And I'm going to tell you, the single biggest reason why I like Baccarat over any other game is because when you play games like Blackjack, Dice, Dragon Tower, any of the other original games, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever fate's put before you. And let me explain this. A prime example, we take the game Blackjack. Whenever we place a bet, it's always you versus the dealer. It's almost like your fate is predetermined. But when that comes to Baccarat, that fact is not true. And I'm going to show you why. It's because we can switch sides. We can decide whether we're going to be the player or the banker. So that bit is under our control. That almost like that element of the game where the game is sort of predetermined. The outcome is predetermined. It's very different for Baccarat. And that fundamentally is one of the main reasons why I prefer Baccarat pretty much over any of the other originals games. Now today we're going to be covering something called the basic strategy. There is a basic strategy on Baccarat which you may or may not be familiar with. And that is, it's quite straightforward. I'm just going to show you with this Excel spreadsheet, but basically it is one of the core strategic advantages of Baccarat is that you can skip a hand. And the way that you can skip a hand on the originals games is to do a zero bet. But if you was playing on a real casino table, you just sit that hand out. So skipping a hand is something you can definitely use to your advantage. And one of the basic strategies out there is where you skip a hand and you bet on a chop. And this is a chop. Chop is where it switches from either banker to player or player to banker. So look, for example here, whenever you start this strategy, you always skip the first hand. Then on the second hand, we can see that the banker won. And then on the third hand, the player won. So that would be called a chop. In this instance, you would normally typically on this strategy would be to bet on the chop, which would be to bet on the banker. Now in this instance, that would have resulted in a loss. And you can effectively flat bet this way. We ignore the ties, we continue to bet on the banker. And this instant the banker won. Then we skip a bet. Then the chop, then we would have bet on player and it would have won. You could see how this plays out. Then we skip a bet. Then we got a tie. It stayed on a player there. So we skip a bet still and then we go on the chop, bet on the banker. That's the basic strategy. Now the problem with the banker strategy is if you do get these excessive long streaks, you can actually lose out. So my thinking was, could I amend that? So I come up with this other idea where basically I said skipping a hand becomes a very good strategic opinion. So it's still sticking to the same. You skip a hand, you bet on the chop. If it wins, it repeats. If you lose, you bet zero until the next chop. And then using Martingale. So only using Martingale on certain instances. So you're not doing full Martingale. You're kind of like doing partial Martingale. And because you're skipping out all the excessive loss streaks, technically, on paper anyway, the excessive long streaks should be minimized. Does that make sense? Now the question is, could I really test this? Could I, how do I check this, without risking any real money? So what I did, I created this piece of code here. It's called Baccarat Chop Suey. Okay, it's created the 1st of January 2025 and it's version 1.0. This is in effect recreating the game Baccarat. Yeah, so one of the first things I wanted to know is, could I recreate that scenario using code? And the answer is yes, you can. And yes, you can. And this is it here. I call this Baccarat Chop Suey. And it's called that way. I don't mean that to sound offensive, and I hope it doesn't. The reason it's called Chop Suey because it's betting on a chop. And it's running Martingale. And it's skipping the streaks. So it should, on paper, minimize the maximum loss streak, which makes it quite an effective strategy for Martingale. I know there's loads of you out there that think Martingale's a really bad idea, but hear me out. Just hear me out. If we can simulate this, we can test it at no risk to anybody. That makes sense? Does that make sense? So this is the code here, and this is a simulation of the game Baccarat. The whole system runs off the exact same mechanics that the casino using Provably Fair, where it uses a server seed and a client seed, and each bet increments a nonce position. So the randomness is created, from the server seed and the client seed and the nonce position added together. And if you know anything about cryptography, then you will know that changing just one of those variables has a profoundly different outcome, and that's what produces the utter randomness into this. Once you've got your raw result, you can then calculate out what the outcome of the bet would be just by applying a relatively simplistic logic, and it's from that we can determine the results of the game events. So this is 100% replicating what the casino does. Now, to prove this, and it's really important to prove this, because I did not want to move forward on a game and testing this until I knew 100% I was replicating, in effect, what it would be like if I was really gambling. And the way we can do that is in the code here. We've got this debug mode. And if I change that variable to true, it's going to show me everything I need to know, including the server seed, the client seed, and the nonce position. And we can check the results that this produces against the results that can be checked on the casino website under its Provably Fair system. It adds a 1 second latency between each bet, so you wouldn't run like this. But what I wanted to do is just show you and prove to you that Provably Fair actually works. I've got 10 results there, just run 10 bets. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to overlay I'm going to take the information from the server seed, the client seed, and the nonce position, and then we're going to check the results. We can see the results here. The final result was the player got 5 and the banker got 6. So let me get that ready, and I'll bring you back. So with the magic of OBS, what I've done, I've overlaid the casino background and the Visual Studio Code terminal output here. And then if we go to the casino and we scroll down to fairness, okay, and we're going to go to the calculator, we're going to check the game event. So we're going to go to Baccarat. And I'm going to put in there the client seed, server seed, and the nonce position 2, and I will bring you back. And what we're expecting to see is player 5, banker 6. Right, so what I've done, I've taken the server seed, which is over here. I've taken the client seed, which is here, and I just put in nonce position number 2. The result for that game, as we can see, was player got 5 and the banker got 6. Does that make sense? So we know that this is replicated provably fair. And if I'm right, if I move it up a nonce position, that should be player 7 and banker 6, and that should have been player win. So if we move up, player 7, banker 6, player win, then it should be 8-7, 8-7. The screen was just slightly wrong there. Next one should be 8-7, which it is. It's 8-7. And the next one should be 0-6, which it is. Because you can test this. This code is free. I'll put it on GitHub. Let me show you. So here it is. This is my GitHub repository. Everything I do, I make open source, guys. So I've got a number of projects under here. So I've done not just Baccarat. I've done Alphaverse, if you know what that is. I've done Dice. I've done Mines. I've done Diamonds. I've done a few more. I haven't made them all public yet. But this one in particular is under Baccarat. Here's the code here. Baccarat Chop Suey version 1.0. And I highly recommend you download and have a play around with this. You know, all you need to do is download Node.js on your machine. It does say here, it's got in the instructions, download and install Node.js. Then you have to run npm install crypto, and then you can just run the code node baccarat chopsuey.mjs. Like I say, I highly recommend you have a play around with this. If you want to verify that Provably Fair works for you, test it. Test it. If you don't believe me, test it. Now in this code here, the events that I spoke about earlier, that conditions on the spreadsheet, have been replicated in this code here. So what this is doing, this is only betting on a chop, and if the previous bet was the same as the last bet, it's betting skipping. It's a strategic use of skipping bets. If there is a streak, it also skips a bet as well. And you can verify these just by looking at the results here. We treat a tie as a non-event. Tie, we're ignoring it. We don't do anything on a martingale. We don't do anything on a tie. Ties only pay at 1x anyway. So it's not a win. It's not a loss. It's just, it is what it is. So even if you get a run on ties, it doesn't affect the outplay of this. So let me just look at this. So I'm not going to go through line by line what the code is, because that would put a lot of people off this video. But we're going to get to the meats and bones of what this video is all about. And it's about testing that strategy, that idea. Like I said, innovate. Now there's a big difference running this code when you run it in simulation mode, when you run it with debug mode enabled or not. In fact, it's immensely fast. So like for example here, I put the variables that you may want to change is the number of bets to run. And I say on average, if you're playing on the casino, you'll get on average around about 10,000 bets an hour. So we can say with pretty decent certainty that 240,000 bets represents an entire day's worth of running. Now you see what happens to this code. Now I've changed this. And if I rerun it, boom, literally seconds, it runs an entire day's. It runs at a bet rate of just shy of 300,000 bets per second. At 300,000 bets per second is 18 million bets in 1 minute and 1 trillion bets a day, an hour. 1 trillion bets an hour. So if you want to test things, there literally is no faster way of testing this. If you want to get to the source of truth, know the real risk involved in whatever you choose to run this type of code. JavaScript, fantastically fast. And the key thing is when you're doing this is being able to accurately recreate the game events. And you can verify that by checking your outputs in debug mode against the provably fair calculator, so you know for certain you are 100% replicating the game. I really bleat on about that. So we saw in this instance and the bit that I'm really interested in is the maximum loss streak. So we had a loss streak of minus 20, so 20 losses in a row. So it would have applied a martingale up to 20 times. So this is where my spreadsheet comes in handy. I use this all the time. This spreadsheet is so helpful. In here, I put my start balance in. I put my base bet in. Tell it how much I'm going to add per loss. And then it's going to work out which point it's going to crash. Now we saw that it got to minus 20. Now in this instance, I'm just saying for the purpose of testing right now, I'm just going to have a very tiny start balance of 10. And when I say 10, that is in TRX. So given one TRX is about 25 cents, that's like $2.50. Now to cover up to 20, I would have needed an additional funds of 605 TRX, just over 605 TRX. 605 TRX extra to cover me to minus 20. Now let's go back to the stats of that results. That would have paid out 38 TRX profit in 24 hours, which on the face of it doesn't particularly seem that exciting. When you look at each one of these bet outcomes in isolation, they're simply not exciting at all. In fact, the only way I can make it exciting is by applying this to my system called Alphaverse, which is running here, which is currently not running this strategy. It's running a different strategy where I've got 160 bots running here, and each bot is independent, and I'm achieving around about 1.8 million bets per hour in real gambling. So let's revisit those numbers. Because when you look at it this way, it brings a whole different perspective to it. Because suddenly that 38 TRX, let's take a copy of that, 38251, in isolation does not seem very exciting. And that's per day. Now if I took that 38 TRX, put that number there, and I timed it by the number of bots I got in play, we can see actually that's 6,120 TRX per day. And if that holds up, this becomes super exciting, because if we took that figure and we times it by 7, suddenly that number becomes very exciting, because that is 42,843 theoretical profit per week on 160 bots. And if we was to put that into monetary terms, that is potentially $10,710 profit per week. Now that seems way too good to be true, and I'm bringing you on this journey quite early on, and we're going to test it. We are actually going to friggin' test this. I'm going to need a bit of luck. If we go back to my Alphaverse, I don't quite have enough funds in there to basically do this at the moment, so I'm going to rely on a little bit of luck, and I've just got some ideas. And so let's go back to the code and let's stress test this even more. You know what, realistically, let's say, for example, we're going to run for 1 week. Now my prediction is that's going to make 6,120 TRX, if that truly holds up. Now if that prediction holds up, then this figure holds up as well. So let's test this. Let's run 1 week simulation. So to simulate a week, we would need to run 1,680,000 bets. Let's rerun this. Seconds, literally seconds to run this. Pretty darn close, guys. 231 TRX profit for the week. Worst loss streak is minus 18. Right, we know that is probably, if you're going to run this long term and you're going to run 1.8 million bets per hour, you're going to probably go beyond that. Now the question comes is, what is it realistically going to look like? So let's push these out even more. Let's simulate an entire month's running by running 7,200,000 bets. So quite interesting. So the highest loss streak again was minus 19. So 19 losses where a Martingale was applied. There would have been a much greater loss streak, but don't forget we were doing skipping bets where there's a streak. So this made 1,004 TRX profit in a month. Now let's think about this. This is what's making this stretch a little bit exciting for me, because I hope these numbers hold up true. Because if it made 1,004 TRX profit in 1 month, that's $251 it would have made in a month. Now if you times that by the 160 bots I got, that's 160,000 TRX, which is 40,000, which is in line with what I said is about $10,000 per week. Now you can see why suddenly this becomes very interesting. The whole idea of running Alphaverse is to micro bet. The base bet within this is minuscule. It's 0.000, so that's 3 zeros, 5 of 1 TRX. So that's 5 1,000ths of 1 TRX. And 1 TRX is 25 cents. So in effect, every bet that we start off is of such a low denominator, is 0.0001 cent. You can bet that low. But when you're betting like this, 1.8 million bets per hour, they sure as hell count up very, very quickly. Then the next key thing is, like, as you can see one here, we've got one bust. And I want you to see this because this would all be totally unmanageable if they required manual intervention. The key here is automating it. And that's what Alphaverse does. You know, when it detects a bust, it fixes it. This gives us the ability to run each bot with only a tiny balance. And then it has this idea of a shared recovery pot that it shares across all accounts. I mean, this would work out astronomically expensive if you wanted to run this individually. But when you run it on Alphaverse, you can share the entire balance across all accounts. And that gives us so much flexibility. Let's quickly go back to the code. Now let's push this even further because we're going to simulate an entire year's worth of running. This is crazy. But these are the lengths you need to go to. When you're betting at 1 million bets an hour, yeah, you're going to get a truer reflection. So 86,400,000 bets. I'm going to run that. and I'll bring you back when this is done. Okay, that finished. It did not take very long at all. I've simulated an entire year's worth of gambling. 86,400,000 bets in less than a couple of minutes. Now the key metric is this highest losing streak, minus 22, because that is absolutely key. And we could see here that the largest bet placed was 3,716 TRX. But more importantly, look at the profit. Look at the profit. Let's have this crazy idea. Let's say, I'm going to copy that. Let's transpose those into Excel. What is the theoretical possibility from that? This is why I'm excited about these numbers. Right, prepared to be shocked. Guys, these numbers are crazy. If one bot can get 13,140,000 TRX in 1 year, over the 160 bots I've got, that would be 2,100,000 TRX profit, which basically, when you look it down over the duration of a year, that's a whopping over £500,000 profit. I mean, that is the best possible outcome. Suddenly, I mean, that changes everything. It changes the landscape. If we're saying on average this is going to make about 40,000 TRX profit per week, I mean, that is absolutely game changing. Let's go back to our other spreadsheet. Again, I put this spreadsheet as a pinned comment on the link. It's free, you can download it, play around with this. And we start introducing the idea of recovery pots. So we saw in the code, over the duration of 1 year, we had a 22 loss streak. If we wanted to cover up the 22 loss streak, we'd need obviously a bigger balance. So I could set the recovery pot, for example, to 3,000. Right, I had to make a slight adjustment there. I noticed in my code I had the base bet of 0.0005, but I had it in the spreadsheet 0004. So I had to make a slight amendment there. So if I increased the recovery pot to 3,300, that would take me to minus 22 losses. And if we go back to the results, it wouldn't have covered me because it would have gone to the 23rd bet, which basically 3,700 odd, 3,337. It would have placed this bet, and it did in the duration of an entire year's worth of running. So what I would do in effect, if I'm playing this for real on Alphaverse, I'd have 2 recovery pots in play, and should that one crash, I could pull the other one in, which would cover me, and I can add that here for the 23rd bet, and then that would have covered me. So in effect, what I'd be saying is, if I had 160 bots in play and had a start balance of 10 TRX per account, and had a recovery pot, 2 recovery pots in play, which is 6,600, that means I've got 1,600 in play balance plus 6,600 in recovery pots, which means I'd need a start balance of 8,200. So in effect, I've got at risk 6,600, but given that this is going to make 40,000 TRX per week, that's going to make about 5,714 per day, which means the break-even point is 1 day, 1.15 days. So this is where I need a bit of luck. So if I'm going to test this, I need this to be stable. I'm willing to risk. You've got to risk. It's gambling at the end of the day. So I think the early days of this is where the risk lies. So I'm willing to risk 6,600 to see how it goes. I mean, there's such fantastic numbers. Now, to put everything into perspective, like the next bet is 6,800, then 13,000, then 28,000 and 58,000. Let's say if you really wanted to run this for a year, I sort of be protecting along this line here, 468,000. But I think you're better off just saying, if you lose a pot, you're making so much money anyway, providing you're in profit anyway, just forego it. Don't chase the losses. So it's really, really, really early days. Okay, this is just an idea that came to me that I've put in Excel. I've checked the numbers. They ring true. I've built a simulator. It rings true. Now the next logical step for me would be to code it so it then works on Alphaverse, and then to see what it looks like. And what I should be looking for to get a real true indication. We could look at numbers really, really easily because we can crunch things down. If I rerun the simulation, but this time for just for 1 day, it made, let's say 32 TRX. Each bot in isolation, we should be looking to make 1.33333 indefinitely. 1.3 TRX per hour per bot. So we're going to get an indication very early on whether these numbers are going to hold up. So it's going to be very, very interesting, guys. Very interesting. Let me get it all coded and I will bring you back. Okay. I'd like to say that was easy, but it bloody well wasn't. It's taken me 2 days to code this to run an Alphaverse. And the reason it took 2 days is I learned something new. I learned something new today. I spent ages battling around trying to get the API to work, and I discovered something that I didn't know until today, and that is the fact that I didn't realise you couldn't bet zero on Baccarat on stake originals. And all the years I've been doing this, I actually never knew that. I can't tell you how many hours I've wasted trying to solve that, which actually was not a problem. It's only when I got into support that they explained to me you cannot do zero bets, which fundamentally breaks the idea and the concept of this strategy, which was to skip hands. I've had to make some changes, so I'm coming into this code relatively cautiously, and I'm going to explain what I've done. So instead of doing zero betting now to skip a hand, what I am doing is fundamentally the same and just betting at the lowest denominator, which is 0.0001 of 1 TRX, instead of doing zeros. Fundamentally, the code does do exactly what it did in simulation, but it's not skipping hands by doing zero bets. And given the fact that we know that there is a slight edge over the banker versus the player, I decided just to do the lowest denominator bet on banker only. Yeah, and you can see in the code here. So in this section of the code here, instead of doing zero bets, as you can see, I've just set to the lowest denominator, 0.001 of 1 TRX. So I've done some testing. This one account here is running the code here. This one account. It's been running for just over half an hour. And what I have done, just again, there's so many unknowns in this. So many unknowns in this code. You know, I'm coming from a very comfortable position. So far on this strategy that I'm running on the rest of Alphaverse has wagered over 100, close to 110,000. It's probably over that because I've had to restart a number of the bots at no cost. I've wagered $110,000 at zero costs using the strategy that I've got at the moment. And if you want to know, go back and look at my previous video that explains that strategy. You know, I'm keen to change this because I want to test things, because this code is particularly boring. It's not designed to profit anything. It's just designed to wager, but it's very low risk. So what I'm going to do, and what I have done, is I've reduced the base bet down. In the simulation, I was betting at 0.005, and I've again reduced that down to its lowest denominator. And I'm going to switch all of my Alphaverse to run on this, but I'm going to set it so that when it busts, it's going to require manual intervention because there's too much unknown at this stage. I don't know what risk I'm really taking on. So we can see, if we look at the game running itself, so this is running a putty session to the box that's running the code, it does appear to be very stable. And we could see that the worst loss streak so far is -8. So if we go into the spreadsheet, under the current setup, we can cope with up to 12 losses, as you can see there, before it busts. So like I said, there's a lot of unknowns within this. So I suppose the next thing for me to do really is to change all of this to be running a new code. Like I say, I'm coming from a very comfortable position. You know, there's a bit of me thinking, should I just delay this? Should I just delay it? Because the objective of this code was to wager $1,000 per week to get the full VIP perks. You know, and you've got to be around about sort of close to 4,000. Some are already there, some are not. Some you can clearly see where I've restarted them. So like I say, there's a lot of unknowns here. So it all depends how much this particular strategy wagers as well. And again, reducing the base bet has an element of unknown. This current strategy is designed just purely for wagering, and each account wagers about 600 TRX per day. Actually, we can do some basic maths. Okay, let me do some number crunch, because if we know that we'll get on average around about 10,000 bets per hour per bot, it's roughly where it is now actually, then we could say on average can wager about 5 TRX per hour. So you don't need a calculator to work out that that's going to be significantly less than 600. That's going to be about 120 TRX just on wagering alone, but it does profit where the other one doesn't. Let's say that on average is 0.32. So that should be around about 7.68. Let's say 7.7 TRX per day. That's about 1,232 TRX per day, based on its lowest possible bet amount, which probably has the lowest risk, which is about $300 per week. It's got me thinking. I'm not so sure, because I know I get way more than that just by wagering. And again, we don't really know how this is going to really pan out because I did significantly reduce the base bet, which ultimately is going to affect the wagering, which ultimately is going to affect the profit as well. But given there's so many unknowns within this, the only way we're truly going to ever find out actually what it's ever going to generate is by running it. And if I run it with a cautious mindset where I don't have a bust detection, I manually have to intervene, we're betting at the lowest denominator, then we can start to track what's the worst that could happen. Does that make sense? Give this a little bit of thought. I may run these for a little bit longer. Like you can see, these have been running for nearly 5 days, but some are woefully short of the threshold of wagering. Right, leave this with me and I will be back. Okay, giving this some thought. Yeah, I've had a change of heart because, let me show you. My numbers were wildly out. We go back to Alphaverse. Here's the account in question. It's making on average about half of 1 TRX per hour, which is about 12 TRX per day. And if we put that into a spreadsheet, I know that does not sound very much, but just hear me out. 12 TRX profit per day is 84 for the week. With 164 bots, you can see that times that is 13,440 TRX, which is $3,360. Now that is worth it. That is at the lowest base denominator. So if we go back to Alphaverse, it has been immensely stable. All the whilst that stays below 12, I'm quite comfortable because it wouldn't have crashed. And the only way we're going to really, really, really find out is if I go, fuck it, just go for it. Okay, I'm going to test it. I have decided I'm going to test this, so I'm going to change all of my Alphaverse over to switch to this new version of Chop Skip Baccarat. So let me get that all set up and I will bring you back. Okay, I've done it. I've bit the bullet. I've changed every account to use this new version of the code. So all on version 1. As you can see, the wager is basically nothing. Profit is nothing. I'm going to reset the timer. I feel I lost some really important stats there. There was a bit of me thinking I could have just continued running that code, like wagered like $1 million at no cost. I think that would have been an amazing headline. Anyway, that opportunity's foregone now. So again, lots and lots of unknowns. They're all betting at the base minimum bet amount. Kick these off. I have no idea how this is going to run. So the wager's gone up quite nice. Profit's negative, but that will change. Right. I'll be back. Okay, I'm just pausing things, guys, because it's busting a lot more frequently, which is supposed to be expected. I mean, the numbers are looking good, but my recovery pot's way, way, way too high. Recover this one. That went to 16. So what I'm going to do, I've actually looked at the numbers, and I'm going to just put a small recovery pot of 350 and let it run that way. Yeah, which is going to split these pots up a bit slightly, but I feel that's going to run better that way. There's a new change in state that the maximum you're allowed to tip per account is $2,500 per account now, per day. So every 24 hours. So that's in that sort of range. So none of these really that have just previously tipped would be able to tip again. So, unfortunately, to make that change, I'm going to have to restart the server, which is going to throw all the numbers out. So, we just have to make a note of it. We've run for 20 minutes, but it's looking good. It's looking good. Well, I'm just about to restart the server. That unfortunately that's going to put the timer back to 0. But in 20 minutes it's made 52x. That's pretty impressive going. Right, we're all back. We should have 2 recovery pots in play, but they will spread out. So I'm going to run it for another 40 minutes, and that will give us a good indication where we are after 1 hour running and see how it compares to, let's see what sort of funds this is going to make. I'll bring you back. Guys, we're just coming up to the hour mark. I believe it's about an hour mark. I can't be 100% precise on that because I'm not sure where I stopped it. So I said I'd come back in 40 minutes. It might be just slightly over an hour, but guys, if these numbers hold up, let me put those in Excel. 135. Let's say 135 TRX in 1 hour. Yeah, that's still way more than I expected actually. If we did 135 2x in 1 hour, that's $33.75 an hour profit. Because this one's 24 hours and 7 days a week, well, it's 24 hours a day, that's $810 a day, or 3,240 TRX, and over the duration of the week, a very healthy 22,680 TRX profit, which is 5,670. That is worth it. I'm quite excited about this. This code, like I say, it's brand spanking new. Like at that sort of rate, you know, you could just forgo a couple of crashes, you know, like recover that. Now I've got the recovery pot set to 350, but I had to manually intervene once. So this is going to require some tweaking, and I'm going to keep an eye on things here because, yeah, that may need to be increased. So like it's early days, I'm kind of finding the best way to run this strategy now. But right now I'm really excited about these numbers. I'm super excited about these numbers. Right. Leave this with me. I will keep you updated and pray this carries on going the way it does. Right, I'll speak to you very soon. Guys, it's been a couple of more hours. So we're like basically, yeah, two and a half hours into this. And the profit hasn't gone up very much. And yeah, we're getting a few like this where the profit's negative and I'm not quite sure why yet. So I've reset a number of them, but yeah, the profit's not going up. There's something not quite right. Given it's playing Martingale, there should be full recovery. So I'm going to stop this completely. I'm going to revise the code. You know, it's very late for me now, so I'm going to leave this running. Well, I'm just going to leave it switched up overnight, and then I will pick this back up tomorrow sometime. And I'll speak to you soon. Okay, I think I found the error. It's version 1.1 now. I've upgraded it, and yeah, let's try this out. What I'm expecting to see is that none of these should really go into negative profit. You expect a small little bit, but majority are just going to be, technically should be near enough impossible to go to negative. So I'm going to reset the profit. Right, I'll bring you back. Okay, I made a bit of a boo-boo. I'm glad I've done it on my money. I didn't lose any money, but fundamentally there was an error in the code. We're now in version 1.2, so be aware, guys. So if there's any version of the code that's version 1 or 1.1 out there in the wild, do not use it, okay? Because it's riddled with errors. Let me show you where I went wrong. So I had a couple of accounts that made a loss around about 176. You know, rest assured, I still ended up in profit of 256, but that could have been a lot better. And it didn't add up because it said that the loss streak was minus 17. And if you look at the validity checker, you know, that did a bet of 176. Minus 17 should have been 9.9359. So that something was very wrong. If you look at 176, that would have been way out here, like 21 losses in a row. So it was way out. It was way out. So I analysed the data. I looked at the last previous 30 bets and I could see where it was going wrong. And so I had to make some amendments to the code. And the fundamental difference between this version of the code and the version 1.1 was simply because of the fact that I discovered, obviously, trying to do zero betting didn't work. And I set the minimum bet as 0.0001. And then I had a check to say one of the validation to say whether it's a skip bet was to say whether the current bet was less than the 0.001, which was the same as the base bet. So fundamentally it kept doubling up when it shouldn't have done. What I've done, I've changed the minimum bet to 0.00005 of 1 TRX, which is a tiny amount, but that's equivalent of doing a zero bet as far as I'm concerned, and then I could run the check. So this is kind of untested at the moment, but I'm pretty certain we've got this. And as always in life, you measure many times and you cut once. I have rolled out across Alphabet's version 1.2, but there's two things I just want to, before we do that, there's two things. One is this account here, okay, you can't see what it's called, is not level 2 verified. So I'm a little bit intrigued at this stage. I expected that account to be inactive. There was big announcements saying that you have to level 2 verify your account, otherwise you can't play in a casino. Well, today's the 3rd of January. So I'm still able to bet on that account. You can see I click play here. It's betting absolutely fine. That account is it's not even level 1 verified. It's just, it's got me questioning. It's got me questioning whether I'd wasted a lot of money to get every one of these bots level 2 verified. I can't say for certain, but it looks like we never needed to do that. So all those people panicking out there thinking you've got to level 2 verify, it seems if you're playing originals and you're doing API betting, it seems to work absolutely fine. There is no need to level 2 verify. That's what it looks like at the moment. Of course, time will tell. Let's see if we can tip. Well, I've just issued a command to tip the vault to this account here. If that works as well, there is a question mark whether we needed to level 2 verify. So I've just told it to send its vault to this account here, and it bloody well works. Look at that. What? Oh my God, how much pain I went through to get every single account level 2 verified, and I may not have needed to. So listen guys, if you've got accounts out there that are relatively old, you can still tip. They have limited it now to a maximum of $2,500 for every 24 hours, but it still works. And it seems like you don't need to be level 2 verified either. That's massive news. Right, secondly, I didn't notice that they released pre-monthly. So I'm going to collect that and I'm going to see how much that actually gets me. Stake have been really, really generous over the last few weeks. You had 2 monthlies in December, and now we got a pre-monthly on the 2nd December, and then tomorrow, because today is Friday, we got the weekly as well. I say it's been really, really, really generous. So let me collect the pre-monthly. Let me reset the profit. But while that's doing that, I'm just going to run this one account here. I'm just going to test one account. And before I kick this off fully, I'm going to analyze some of the bets. If I see an excessively long lose streak, I'm going to analyze the numbers to make sure they fully match up to what was expected. So let me collect the monthly and I'll bring you back. Right, it's time for the big reveal. There's a couple of things I observed, and I'll show you when we go to the next screen. I think they're going to be quite important. Well, I know they're going to be quite important. You're going to want to know this information. Okay, so how much did we make? How much did we make? Not bad. Not bad. That's free money, guys. Just shy of $950. So 3,595 TRX. Hey, that's free money, guys. That is free money. I didn't expect that. We had 2 monthlies last month, and we got a pre-monthly this month, and we got the weekly coming out tomorrow, and then around about the 15th you get another monthly. Now, a couple of observations that I think you're going to find interesting in this. I've got some good news, I've got some bad news, and I've got some good news. So let's start off with the bad news. So typically you find on a pre-monthly, it pays out similar amount of money to a full weekly. So if you wagered $1,000, how much would it pay you in a weekly? And I usually find the pre-monthly is pretty much done close to that. And it used to be around about $5 per account on bronze, and then it used to go up from there onwards. But it seems that they have made a change. You know, they've got generous on one hand and they've taken away with the other. So they've reduced the amount they paid out. I suppose I won't really know until tomorrow, so I will keep this video go to verify my results. But it's now appearing that for every account that's on bronze VRP is paying out on average around about $2.30. Every account that's on silver is paying out on average $6.30. So that's quite a big jump there. And then on gold, it's around about $8.30, and platinum is about $10.30. So maybe might be able to work out the maths from there. So that's the bad news. Obviously, they seem to have reduced the amount they're going to pay out on the weekly. But the good news is I expected the accounts where they're not level 2 verified to no longer get the weekly and monthly bonus. That's not true. I can still continue to collect. So I have accounts, probably have a couple of accounts amongst this lot here where they're not level 2 verified. It comes up a big red warning when you go into the website. It said they had to be verified by the 31st of December. Well, hey, I can still gamble. I can still bet. I can still tip. And I can still collect the bonuses. So that's some good news. So I'm really pleased with these results, guys. So you probably don't realise, but if you saw the video prior to this, and maybe the video prior to that as well, you know, where I say to you, play to get the VIP perks. With this, you know, last week, I said I've got around about $4,000 in VIP perks over the last 2 weeks. And it's been a couple of days later, and I've got another $1,000 here. That's $5,000 over the last couple of weeks in VIP perks. And we got the weekly tomorrow. So that'd be closer to $6,000, I imagine. So very good. I'm very happy with that. That's free money. I've taken a load out. So I've left this running for quite a while now. So I'm going to analyze some of the bets just to make sure that it's behaving as expected to before I release it to the rest of the Alphaverse. So let me do that and I'll bring you back. Okay. So I've done some testing and I created a version of the code which outputs the results to a CSV file so I can analyze to make sure it's following the strategy exactly. I'm happy with the results. It seems to be doing what it was originally intended. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you check things to really find detail, because very small mistakes can really compound when you're on Alphaverse. Test, check, test, check, test, go live. Okay, only when you're happy. Always have an air of caution when you're deploying a new strategy onto Alphaverse. Go into it with a really cautious mindset. So what I'm going to do is, I've actually got too much money in play here. So I'm going to transfer. I probably only have a couple of pots in play because I won't be around all the time. So I'm going to transfer some money. So bear with me a sec. I'll reset this to 0 so you can see exactly how much I've taken out. And I'll be right back. Okay, I've taken out $1,500 or 5,600, or just shy of 5,700 TRX. I've left 2 recovery pots in play. I could have taken out more if I wanted to drain down even more, but we're pretty much ready to test this now. Okay, we're going. I've reset everything. I've reset the timer. I've reset the profit. The wager was reset. And let's see how this runs. It definitely seems to be a lot more stable than the other version. So if you see a version 1.0 or 1.1, don't use it. I will never publish it, but just in case it gets out there in the wild, just don't use it, okay? 1.2 is the version I'm on now. Okay, right. I'll speak to you soon. Okay, I've got to laugh because things are not going to plan, guys. So you can see I'm on version 1.5 of the code now, and there's still problems with this version. It's very frustrating. But I brought you back because we've reached the stage again. Today is Saturday and we've got the weekly. I've done amazingly well. I've taken out 7,000 TRX already, which is sitting in another account. And then I've got the weekly again. I should be able to reconcile what we've done this week. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to collect this week's weekly. I don't expect this to be the full amount because I didn't quite do $1,000 on most accounts. Some I did, some I didn't. I won't really know, to be honest, until I collect it. And then we'll do a tally up because I may revert back to that code and just run that for the moment until I perfect this version of the code. I went from extremely safe to a point where it was making, some accounts were making a loss, and I saw a bug in the code. When I fixed that, it got to really extremely volatile. I mean, it made like $89 in a couple of minutes. So that 89 TRX in a couple of minutes, so you know that that's going to be unstable. And it was, and it really was. It was really volatile. So there's something fundamentally wrong with version 1.5. God knows what version I'll be at by the time I release this video, but I will keep chipping away at it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to collect the weekly, and I'm going to do a tally up to see exactly where I am, because I think I've done really well this week, really well. I mean, I did really well the previous week. I cashed out, at $4,000. And yeah, let's see what we've done this week. Right, be right back. Okay, that's done. I collected the weekly. I'm not expecting this to be great, guys. I'm not expecting it. I tell you what, I tell you something. I feel, in all the years of doing this, and the 10,000 plus hours I put into this, I fucking got this. I've got this. Like, I could clearly tell the accounts that I wagered $1,000 and the ones that hadn't. There was such a stark difference in much it paid out. I'm telling you, it's not documented anywhere. $1,000 wager per week is really where you should be aiming for. So that will get you the full VIP perks. Let's have a look. 543. That's okay. I'm happy with that. That's free money. That is free money. I wagered something like $120,000 in total at no cost, but I didn't really make any profit. And then I changed strategy. So now some of you might be screaming out there, why the hell don't you just stick with the code that you was working with? Because that was waging over $1,000 per week. And let me just show you a couple of things. I'm going to reconcile where we are so I can see exactly how much money truly has been made this week. So I'm going to put all the profits back in play, and I'll be right back. Okay. So this is the amount that I made this week. Just not playing to win, not playing to lose, just claiming VIP perks. It did help the fact that we had a pre-monthly as well. And so that's 2,500. So it's 9,287 TRX profit just this week. And then I was something like 4,000 the week before that. That, it seems really boring. Really, really boring. The way that I play, there's very little to do. But I'm very happy with those numbers. If I can inspire one person, to replicate what I do, then great. It's a lot of work. Don't underestimate the amount of work that goes into this to getting this all set up and running. But once you're there, yeah, it's bloody well worth it. Now, obviously, I'm in dilemma now because I don't know what to do at this stage. There's a bit of me thinking I should go back to the holding code, but there's also a lot to be said in playing a profit strategy as well. The problem when you play the holding code is that you literally make no profit. You're just solely dependent on the weekly bonuses. And you can see in the monthly, and the post-monthly, and the pre-monthly, and the rate back, and all those lovely things. And as you can see, for me, that's been very profitable. But that doesn't mean that could be the case going forward. I'm very acutely aware that that could all go tumbling down very, very quickly. Like when I play the holding code, I've got 2 recovery pots in play of $3,000. And if I was to lose both of those, that would just wipe this out. 6,000 TRX. could just be gone in an instant. And because there's no profit to be had in this is why I want to change it. So I just want to show you the code. And the only reason I want to show you the code is because I just want to explain, where I've come in my journey. This new version of the code has given me the opportunity to refine the code. I've become very proficient in JavaScript coding and writing for these strategies, these types of strategies. And one of the ideas that's been always floating around in the back of my mind is to create a generic catch-all strategy where, in effect, I can include all of the originals games. And this is the basis of it. So what you're going to begin to see in my code is you can specify the game. So Baccarat is the one we're playing at the moment, but I'm going to add in there all the other games. So at the moment, it could be dice, it could be Dragon Tower. In fact, I can add quite a few. I've done Limbo, I've done Roulette, I've done Dragon Tower, I've done Blackjack. And my plan is to get through all of these original codes. So the idea being is that this section of the code, I say don't touch it. And the do bet function is the only bit that you really fundamentally need to change. So if we create a generic template for all of the originals games, you could code any strategy across any originals games and switch games mid-cycle. And I think that's going to be an area that I'm going to be exploring over the sort of coming months, is to try to create that generic template that could be used across any of the originals games. And that gives us power. And it gives us power because it allows us to play strategies that are impossible to play on any other casino, where you can carry over the bet conditions, next bet, previous bet, how much to increase on a loss, whatever, over to and switch games as an effective strategy. So keep your eyes out for that. I think that's going to be immensely useful. So basically it would just be a generic JavaScript code that you can use to run any of the originals games. Just a one-stop shop. Well, I'll keep you updated on that. In the meantime, I've got to decide what I want to do. I'm still going to persevere. I'm still going to try and get this right. I have an inkling where I think I've gone wrong. I'm like my third day now trying to perfect this code. But I think it's worth it. I think it is worth it. If you have a strategy that does pay a profit, it gives you the ability to recoup a recovery pot. And I've always had in mind that, this idea where you just play not to win, not to lose, but you get the VIP perks, is great, all the whilst you're lucky. And I may well have just been lucky. And it's worked really well for me, but I can't guarantee it's going to work well for everybody. Like I said, I just may have got lucky. So having some form of strategy that produces some form of profit, I think there's legs to be had in writing a piece of code that is somewhat more aggressive. So if you can win more than you lose, you expect to lose at some point, and in fact you design it to lose, but you're going with quite an aggressive strategy, I think there's legs to be had in that as well. Trying to never lose is mission impossible. Designing a solution that allows for losses, and you expect losses, but you're making sufficient enough profit that you're covering those losses and more, and that's areas that I further want to explore. Having a platform like Alphaverse allows me to fundamentally try these ideas out. At the risk of waffling on for bloody ages, I'm just going to end this part of the video here, and I will bring you back once I feel I've got somewhere with this code. Remember, it's never a race. There is no rush. Take your time. Test, 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 go live. That is exactly what I'm doing right now. It's taken me 3 days to get to version 1.5. It may well take me another 3 days. It does not matter. It doesn't matter. Right. I'll speak to you soon. Okay. I think I found the error. I think I'm finally there. Version 1.6 now. The problem was where I defined what the total bet was. So I'm going to rename this code. It's going to be called Chop, Bet and Skip. And that will all make sense. That's the new, because that's exactly what it's doing. So what I did within this code, I've told it to output the results to a CSV file so I could deeply analyze it, because it was quite complex to code this, and I'm going to show you in the results in a minute. Version 1.7, which is going to be released, will be basically the same as version 1.6, but this would be commented out. So if you wanted to analyze yourself, you can just uncomment this section here where it's got append to local CSV file. You can uncomment it if you want to have a look at it. And if we have a look at those results here, I ran it for 204 bets to analyze, and I'm keeping a high account on the bet number, what the player hand was, what the banker hand was, what the result was, what we bet on, whether we win, whether we lose, how much profit, and what the streak was. But the strategy is that we're playing basic strategy where you bet on a chop and then applying Martingale to that, but not applying Martingale if there's a streak. So we should be able to see this. You see here, even here, you can see where we got 3 banker wins in a row. The bet amount did not change. So the logic is exactly following as I designed it to do. We can see pretty much all the streaks will follow that process. The bet won't increase on a loss all the whilst there's a streak. So, because that's the killer in basic strategy. It's the streaks that kill you. So it was quite complex to code, because I had to have multiple variables to work out what the previous result was and checking against this result and deciding whether to bet or not to bet, and what determining factor was on when not to bet. Anyway, it's done. So I'm reasonably happy with the results. So I suppose what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create version 1.7 of this code. This is going to have comments, comment this out. So just those 5 lines I've commented out, and that will be version 1.7. Let me get this all set up and I'll bring you back. Okay, many hours later, guys. I had some issues, but I'm ready. I've changed everything to 1.7. I'm just going to reset the timer. But what I'm going to do is, because there's still so much caution around this code, I'm just going to take out the accounts that have a recovery pot. Okay, another change. I've had to roll out a new version 1.8. I won't spare you the details, but I'll show you what happened if you're interested. Even the tiniest detail needs to be exactly spot on for this strategy. I noticed that in an event of a tie, it was reverting to base, like the minimum bet, and that caused me problems. So I've rectified the code. I've got version 1.8 now. I have to say I'm getting tired of this. I've been at this all day. But I suppose why it's so important to really, really test things. I did actually lose a recovery pot because of this, but it gives me an opportunity to check things actually. So I've rectified that in the code, and version 1.8 I've got no recovery pots in play. It all kind of looks in order actually. So I'm just going to risk 1 recovery pot. Right, I'll leave this running and I'll bring you back. Okay, guys, I've been running it for 18 hours now, and I have to say, when you run this sort of platform here, Alphaverse, you get a really strong feeling of how a particular strategy is going to run, and this one feels like it's really, really comfortable. So it's been running for 18 hours. Ignore this profit because I've been shifting funds around, but what we can do is we could take a complete snapshot of all of this, and I could put that in Excel. Okay, I put it all in Excel, and we could take the profit column and we could just total it up, guys. It's really good. 1,165. So it's making 64 TRX per hour. So that's estimated to make 1,555 a day, which is 10,881 a week. So I need this to last a week. Really, really, really good numbers. So what's that in monetary terms? That's about $2,700 profit per week. That's excluding the weekly reload. Yeah, this code, guys, it's taken some time to perfect it. And I've now renamed it. It's now called Baccarat. So it's now called Baccarat, Chop, Tie, and Skip. This is version 1.8. But there'd be version 1. I'll keep it at 1.8. I'm going to put this in Discord. Let me get all that set up. I'm going to add a description to this code as well, and I'll set the parameters that you're going to need to set it if you want to run this yourself in Alphaverse. Yeah, let me get all that done and I'll be back, and so I can publish this video. Yeah, and that's my present for the new year, guys. Alright, I'll speak to you soon. Okay, I changed my mind. I've gone to version 1. So because this previous versions were just testing, so I'm now at 1.0, which is stable. Okay, so I've renamed it to version 1.0 and I've created a detailed description. And in here I've got the training video, which is this video now being created. It says to be determined here, but by the time you see this code, it will have the URL for this video in that code. Make sense? Right. Right, where I'm going to put this, if you head on over to Discord, and if you're not a member of my Discord, an invitation link will be in the pinned comment to this chat, and it's under community code here. These are, like-minded people creating code just like me, just like you, trying novel ways to beat the casino. Okay, it'll be here. It will be called Chop, Tie and Skip version 1. Now, I kind of like version 1 because there are further refinements that possibly could be done to this code that I'm going to speak about now. And I will have a play around with this. And before this video is ended, I would add my comments to this. But fundamentally, the reason we're going to change it, the code won't change itself. But I've started this off with a 10 TRX balance per account with the base bet defined within the code. And I'm probably unlikely to change that. But what I may well change is the start balance. And I can have a look at the Excel spreadsheet to see where that would be. For example, if we increase it to 20, that may well push out the crash point for the first crash anyway by 1, which may bring an extra level of stability. And I'll have a play around with the recovery pots as well. Now right now I've got too much funds sitting in vaults of inconsistent values. So I do plan to clean that up. And one thing else I want to show you, which I've said multiple times on multiple videos, is that if you have any account that fundamentally is 80% or more greater to the next VIP level, you might as well frigging go for it. Because if you did it at 80%, for example, you're going to get your money back. If you did it at 85%, you're going to make a little bit of profit. And if you did it at 90%, you're going to make even more profit. And I've got some code. This one here is called Dice Next Level Wager. Now, if you've downloaded Alphaverse, all of you will have this in your client folder. If you look in your client folder, you will see this. It says Dice Next Level Wager. Okay, I've got 2 accounts that are 85% of the way to the next level. One's on bronze, one's on, well, they're both on bronze actually. It's slightly disappointing. However, if I show you, and again, I have a spreadsheet for this. So if we take this one account here where it says it's at 85.22% away to the next VIP level, and if I put that information into the spreadsheet, I set the current level to bronze. You need to wager 40,000 to get to silver. We're 85.22% of the way, which means I've wagered $34,088 towards that. That means there's a balance of 5,912. And if we took the current TRX price, which is 0.26, that means I would need to wager 22,738. So we've ran that up to 22,750. Then what you would do is simply in the code on Dice Next Level Wager, is set the wager target. So in this instance, it would be 22,750, as we said. And I just leave that running. What this runs is dice at 99% win chance with some strategic switch over unders. Nothing fancy, nothing sophisticated. I've run comparisons between running, for example, Baccarat, betting on both the banker and the player, versus running dice at 99%. Baccarat is predictable and you're going to make a loss. Dice, you know, strategically, what you want to be doing is getting at less than 1 loss per 100. And this is where this code comes in. And the only thing you can do really is strategically bet higher, bet low. Okay, and what I have in the code here is, yeah, if you have a win streak over 50, it changes, flips between betting high and betting low. over 100 and 150. You probably can get more sophisticated than that. But there is an argument even to not even have that, actually. Just let it run. This may actually introduce further loss streaks. But I have run versions of this, and it's generally, if you get 1 in 100 loss, which statistically, which is what you'd expect, then you're going to come in and complete that probably at a profit. Right, but I'm not going to run that because that's not the purpose of the video. I am going to do that offline because I'm going to get these up to Silver VIP, because as you saw earlier, that it is well worth you for the VIP perks to get to the next VIP level. And whenever an opportunity comes along, take it. And if you can get there at no cost or very small profit, or depending where you are, you may as well go for it. So like I say, we're at version 1 now. And the bits I'm going to have a play around with is the balances. So let me do that and I'll be back. Right, let's look at this in Excel. So this spreadsheet is immensely useful. I genuinely use this spreadsheet all the time. In here, I have got a lot of stuff. The base bet page is where you put all your base bet, where we're going to set up start balance, how much to add on each loss, and then what our base bet's going to be. And then we go to the validity checker tab, and we can see in sequence what the next bet's going to be. And you will find, and I'm going to show you in a moment, that these numbers will match through to the 8th decimal place. If your betting does not match what you've got in Excel, stop. Okay, stop. Genuinely, something's not right. Like I said, I'm going to show you that. So we know that with a 10 start balance, it's going to crash at minus 16. So it get to the 16th bet and it can't do the 17th. There's simply not enough funds. And this is where there is a detection. If the balance goes below 6 TRX, that's deemed as bust, and then it automatically sends across the recovery pot. And if we put in here recovery pot, and I said 350, under the current setup, if we add the recovery pot, it's going to take us to minus 21, and it can't do minus 22 bet. Does that make sense? So 362. So under the current setup, and actually I've got the perfect opportunity to show you, because I literally have one account that is exactly like that. This one here. So it's got the first recovery pot and it crashed. And as we can see, the next bet is 362.10550607. So remember that number. That is coming from the casino, what the next bet is going to be. Remember, 362.10550607. There we go, the next bet. As calculated, 362.10550607. It is correct to the 8th decimal place. If you run in anything and it does not match through, like I say, stop. Something's wrong. And this is why this spreadsheet is so useful. Now, if we just said, for example, that instead of having a recovery pot, let me take this out. Instead of having a start balance of 10, we had a start balance of 20. But we don't change the base bet. So this instance, it would take us to minus 16, and it can't do the 17th bet. And if we increase the start balance to 20, that actually pushes out the crash point by 1. Now, that may not sound like very much, but actually that is quite... The number of times it's crashed and it only needed one more bet is so common that actually I think that will bring around that extra level of stability. And what I would do in this instance, I would go into the code and I'd create a version... I might create a version 2.0, for example, because that would represent that the start balance is 20. It would be quite easy to see. And when you do that, it's very important that you come down to the code. Yeah, so if you're going to increase the start balance to 20, you'd need to make a couple of changes to the code. So I'd create a new version. So at the moment we're in version 1.0, so I'd create a version 2.0, and I'd keep it 2.0 because that kind of represents what the start balance is going to be, and it's kind of visually easy to see. And then we need to go down to, I think it's line 285. So I'll change this line of code here. So I always say, put into your vault when your start balance is 20% in profit. So obviously if we started off at 20, that would need to change to 24. So that means when it's made 20% of its start balance as profit, it puts that into the vault. And it leaves behind whatever you got defined in recovery threshold. So you will have to go into your client config, change where it says recovery threshold, for example. Mine was set to 10, but obviously now that's going to be changed to 20. Otherwise, every time you restart the bot, it will basically put a start balance of 10. So that needs to be changed to 20. Does that make sense? Let's change the client config to 20. Change line 285 to say vault when it makes 20% of your start balance into that, and just change the version number because it's very difficult to keep track. When you've got lots of bots in play, you really want to know what version of the code you're running. You can see here, it tells you which version of the code you're running here. So mine's still on 1.8. Right, coming back to mine, we can see we've got this one account here, which it says here minus 20, but that is actually minus 21. There was obviously one slight flaw in the code, which I may have a look at. It seems to be one integer out. That should say minus 21. It shouldn't say minus 20. So something's probably slightly out on the counter. Maybe it started at 0 and it should start at 1. I may have a look at that. But just at this stage, recognize that this negative value, and bear in mind that is not a true reflection. That is not an absolute true reflection, because the code is bet in on the chop. It ignores the ties and it ignores the streaks. That loss streak, and I'm not tracking those, that loss streak will be much, much greater. I may write a version of the code where it does keep a track of that just for general interest, but that is not a true reflection. The actual loss streak would be much greater than that. Let me see if I can find that bet data. Let's see if I can bring it up on screen. Because again, like I say, being methodical on this is so important. So I said in the code that first crash, 350 recovery per automated. Right, apologies, I had to put that base back to 10. I had to put the start balance back to 10. So I'll add in the first recovery pot, which is taken as exactly where we said, minus 21. Even though it says minus 20 on there, that is minus 21. And in here, we're going to add, I said in the code, a secondary recovery pot of 3,500, which is going to take us to minus 24. So if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 additional bets. Okay. And in here, I've got that ready. And I'm just going to click play on that. It's quite rare that it gets to that. Okay, that one got a little bit hairy. I had to put 2 3,500 recovery pots in there. Okay, bear that in mind. I did recover. Yeah, that account is wagered. Okay, that's slightly worrying. Keep an eye on that, guys. So probably 3,500. You might need a bit more than that. Okay, just be cautious, guys. So yeah, you can see that there's some risk here. That's the worst I've seen it. That is genuinely the worst I've seen it. Given that this strategy has only been running for 19.5 hours, that gave an indication of how long I've been doing this video now. Yeah, go in there with some level of caution. Now that pretty much wraps this video up. So what I'm planning to do for my own personal setup here is I feel I need to do some tidying up. I've got far too much money sitting in vaults all over the place. I do have the opportunity to increase the start balance on each of these accounts to 20, and I think that will bring along a higher level of stability, how frequently it busts for the first time. Obviously it doesn't affect the second bust, and it doesn't affect the risk. It just brings around a greater level of stability. So and I've got an opportunity to reconcile all of the balances down so I got enough funds to recover. Right guys, generally that is it. I'm bringing this video to a conclusion. Everything you need, including the links to the spreadsheets, link to Discord, if you want the code, and there is a version of this that for simulation written in JavaScript, and I've put that on GitHub as well. I will also put that link in the pinned comment as well. So hopefully you've got everything you need if you want to have a play around with this. I don't recommend this strategy if you've got a smaller balance. Looking at that now, you know, that's thrown me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It's been really stable until it's hit that. But I suppose it's not really fully tested because we're only kind of 19 hours into this anyway. Let's let this bust recover and we'll just do a final tally on how much profit is made now. And what I really need is some luck. I need this to run for a period of time because if that continues to run like this, I know that 6,000 or 7,000 2x I put at risk then may seem quite excessive, but if this is making over 10,000 TRX per week, then that doesn't seem so bad. So let me just take the numbers now. Okay, so I put them in a spreadsheet. I put them in Excel. So we're looking at the profit column here, which is column K. And what we need to do is need to get rid of these TRXs. So I'm going to replace all the TRXs with just blank spaces because you can't actually add up on. So K, so 1,398 TRX profit. And we've been playing for 19.32 hours. So we take that, divide it by 19.32. That would give us an average hourly profit. And if we take that and times that by 24, which would give it the profit that we're going to make per day, which would be 1,736. And if we take that times up by 7, which is 12,157. And if we take the current exchange rate, which is 0.26, and we apply the monetary, we can tell what this is going to be financially in monetary terms. So theoretically, this is what it will be in terms of dollar amount. $363 a day, or $18.82 an hour. But because that runs 24 hours a day, let me rephrase it. So putting this into monetary value, we can see right now in 19 hours and 32 minutes, 19.32 hours, we've made $363. So that's made $18.82 an hour. And we can extrapolate that out into a daily amount. So we just times that by 24. So this is potentially making $451.56 a day. And for the duration of the week, that's 3,160. I'm happy with those numbers. I'm slightly unhappy with the risk, but we will see. We will see. I think this is much better than the holding code because the holding code literally made no profit. And again, I had the same amount of money at risk. I had two 3,500 TRX recovery pots in play. And should I had lost them, there was literally no mechanism to recover that. No mechanism. This has a mechanism to recover it. And on top of this, we will have the weekly. It won't pay out as much as the holding code, but because you're making a profit anyway, I've worked out this to be much more profitable. So we end the video back on Alphaverse. Genuinely, guys, so this is my gift to you. It's my New Year gift. It's my code, Chop, Tie and Skip. We'll be in Discord. It's all free. I hope you found this video useful, and I'll speak to you all again very, very soon.